Record Show.
And co-host Marine Corps Map, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays,
as well as other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event as they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo check? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey there, it's Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, the host of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes on Revolution Radio. Even though the intro hasn't been changed, Janie is no longer with the show. Okay, so anyway, we're going to have amazing guests today. First, I want to go, I'm waiting for our guests to come on. We are on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can go to the funding page, and we also have really inexpensive advertising right now, large banners on if that interests you for your business. We also have heirloom seeds that help support because we are listener supported 100%. And you can also go to the funding page, and if you want to just donate, you can do that as well. So anyway, today my guest is going to be a man named Roger Spurr, and he is the host of his own YouTube channel called Mud Fossils University. And he is a pretty brilliant guy, and he has scientific evidence to support his claims that he's making and the understandings that he is making on his channel. So anyway, hold on one second. I'm just looking. Hold on a second. Anyway, he just sent me an email saying he's getting ready to call in. So because Skype has changed a lot, it's a little more difficult for me to, and it always has been kind of difficult. My Skype doesn't seem to work like other people's Skype, to try to get my guests on and then get on the network. So for me, it's just a lot easier. It's hard for guests to be quiet during the commercials. So it's just easier for me to let all the commercials and everything play out, and then have them call in or connect them with Skype after I'm already on. And you know what? It saves me a ton of anxiety and stress of trying to juggle it all at once. Because, it's Saturday, and Saturday and Sunday, we're not supposed to have a lot of stress, right? It's supposed to be, clear sailing. So, hold on. We're getting close. We're getting close for him calling in. He's going to call in by telephone. So I'm just going to talk real quick about the smoke here on the West Coast and how horrible it's been. We had one day of clear in a week, which was yesterday, and then it all started blowing back in. And today, again, the smoke is so bad that I can only see the front part of the property next door. And the smoke is pretty thick again. So in Reno, and we have fires going on everywhere around us, and it's pretty difficult. It's killed a lot of the small birds in the nests. I have to go around the property, and I've been picking up the second round of babies that a lot of the birds have had this year. And, they're dead. So I have to go and pick them up around the property before, usually I check in the mornings and stuff, before the dogs get to them. And so I've, been picking up a lot of small baby dead birds, that haven't even tried to flee the nest yet. And so it's been a really kind of interesting thing with all of the fires and having to kind of, stay inside because it's just really bad on the dogs, and myself. Oh, hold on one second. Here we go. Crud. Okay, so I hope I'm on the show. I hope I'm listening to the show here. And it looks like Skype does not want to pick up my guess. And when I did try to pick up the guest, it hung up on me. So hold on one second. Hold on one second. Hi there. Hopefully I'm on back again, but the answering the phone number for the group call, it was kicking me off the show. So I think I've got it all kind of organized now and straightened out. And my guest is going to call me right back, and then I can add him to the show. And like I said, Skype is a poo-poo sometimes, especially with the ways that it keeps changing as it updates itself. So sorry for, yeah. Okay, so now I'm just waiting for Roger to call back, and then I will be able to add him to the group call. And okay. All right, so now I'm just waiting for him to call back in. Hopefully he'll call back in just 3 minutes, and then we'll get him back on. So anyway, Roger Spurr, he's going to be amazing. And I had been following him for a super long time. And I actually emailed him and attempted to hunt him down, for 3 months before finally, one of my email messages got through. And he responded like a month ago about coming on the show. So he's really kind of one of the people that I really wanted, to pick his brain about, the show and his work in mud fossils, which is just like unbelievably mind-blowing. And a lot of the stuff can be visually seen by Google Earth. So you can see the stuff visually. He shows you that kind of stuff. Some of the other people that are branching out who've been watching some of these other people that have been involved in mud fossils, and what they are, have videos up now that are showing Google Earth and showing the actual things that they're talking about that are just unbelievable. You just can't wrap your mind around it. And Roger Spurr, has like gone out of his way to be able to actually pay for laboratory testing on the different things that he is claiming that are certain things, like tissues and bones and different kinds of things. And so he actually has, proof, scientific proof. And he's really, done due diligence about due diligence now on trying to contact other scientists to actually show him, the work that he's been doing. And these scientists have ignore him or poo-poo him. And hold on, I'm emailing him, just letting him know that things are fixed. Okay, so, and then these other scientists, they just don't want to take a look at any of the kind of work that he's doing in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, that's the thing is, that's the paradigm shift right now, right? As people kind of find things they're passionate about, and they start to get, a lot of interest in, I just need to see. They're starting to get a lot of interest, in these things. And then what they do is they start to, move down the rabbit hole and, do confirmation for themselves in whatever way that means, and then putting the information out there. Okay, here we go. Hey, everybody, it's me again, and I am trying to, it just keeps, hold on a second. Let me see if I can call. There we go. Call Roger now. Let's see if I can get him on. Sorry, it's just Hello,
it's Roger.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Hopefully it won't dump off this time. All right. So let's go ahead and start back to how you originally got into mud fossils, what happened, start all over again for our listeners. Please. Thank you.
All right, no problem. Just like I said, it was very just per chance, accidental. I've always been, involved in scientific things all my life. And when I noticed this rock, as I was working, doing some excavation, it was a giant human fingertip. I mean, it was the anatomy was not deniable. And then other things became obvious that they were actually parts of creatures, but, organs of creatures that were turned into stone. And, I have a little bit of chemistry background and anatomy and biology, all that stuff. I love it, that's all. I'm somewhat trained, but not what you would call a doctor or any of that stuff, but I dig pretty deep, so I fully get to understand what I need to know. And I did find out that everything that I was saying, the matter was correct, the materials, the clay and all that business, that's all part of your body. That's all exactly the same chemistry that's in your body. So I decided, well, how the heck did this happen? So I actually found like a lung that was completely a lung. I mean, it had all of the pleura, which is the coating on the lung. It was the shape of the lung. It was the fibers that are on the lung. There's what they call a tongue at the bottom of the lung there that invests the fabric, which is the fascia. It ties that into your body so that all your organs are separated by this fascia, and it ties into the system of the body, which they're now starting to investigate. And they really weren't even looking at much of fascia until just very recently. So anyway, as I kept investigating the fascia, I was contacting people all around the world about it, and
they're looking at it for pain that's in the body, but I wanted to know, how does this stuff work? And what it is it slides all around your body. And it is the only thing that keeps you together. Your bones are completely separate, fall right apart if you didn't have this fascia. So I kept looking, and it covers every single bone and organ, and all the way down to the cellular level. This fascia coats everything. And that's why everything is separate. Every single fiber in every single tendon in your body has to move separately from every single other fiber. And if you don't move separately, you're going to be stiff, and you're going to be in pain, and you're going to hurt. And the fibers are coated with a slippery substance. I think they call it leucine-rich proteins. It's a slimy substance, and it lets them slide nice and freely. And that's why I recommend castor oil for people to, not to take it internally, but to, even rub it on your hands. It goes into your body, and it actually lubricates your tendons. All right, so that's another issue. But I started to get so deep into the chemistry and how the body works, and where concentration of materials and metals and, what I would find in different places in these rocks, which everybody always thought were rocks. Well, they're not rocks. They're body parts. So it ends up, I realize there's all these blood vessels in there, and I can find the blood vessels, and they contain two different types of blood, which you do as well. You have your arterial blood, which is red, and FeO3. It has 3 oxygens. And then you have your blue blood, which is your vein blood, and that's FeO2, only has 2 oxygens. And you can see the same thing in these rocks. You'll see a black spot, which is a vein, which is the black blood. And then you see another spot that'll be the red blood, or it'll be cleared out because arteries evacuate their blood. So anyway, I kept seeing all these things over and over and over and over and over and over, and every single rock I picked up, every single one, hundreds of thousands of them. And I dug a 200-foot drainage ditch where I live, and there was thousands and thousands and thousands of rocks, and every one of them I could tell had been some form of a creature's body part. So I actually used all these rocks that I had collected to fill this drainage ditch because I needed rocks. There was that many rocks. Absolutely unbelievable. So going forward, I decide, well, I have all these specimens, and I know what they are, so I get a hold of Yale, and they really were not excited. So nobody was excited. So I said, well, what would it take to have you even look at it? They refused to look at it. Absolutely, just not at one of them, not a single university. So I said, well, what would it take? They said, oh, you need DNA tests and CAT scans. I said, all right, let's do that then. So I did it. And it all came back, DNA, 100% mitochondrial human DNA, exactly what I had, that was done by 2 different DNA labs, Helix Paleo Labs and Eaton Bio Labs. And then I also had them CAT scan, and there was Jesse Garant, the best CAT scans in the world. They do racing car engines and everything. I had a bunch of CAT scans, and Jesse donated them, knowing what I had, and these are not cheap. So that was thousands and thousands of dollars worth of donated work, and I am always in Jesse's debt. And then I also had Gil Headley look at these, who owns an autopsy school, teaches autopsy all around the world, and confirmed it as well. So there was no denying it, and nobody would look at it still. And that is the condition I'm in today. And that was over 3 years ago. I got all the results back. And it is still virtually not allowed. That's the bottom line.
So that...
It is... One more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
It is so spectacular. I don't disagree with that the average mind would say this guy has to be absolutely off his rocker to be talking this way. And that I fully understand. However, I can point to one thing that absolutely verifies everything that I'm going to say. And if you go on your Google Earth, everybody's got it now, you just go on Google Earth and go over to Morocco and look at the Atlas Mountains. and you're going to see a dragon. And if you just take your time over there, look, you will see a dragon. There's dragon scales all over, and I have just dozens of videos about this. And that dragon is gigantic, hundreds of miles long. So if you don't see it there, go to my videos, and I have it. As a matter of fact, I can tell you what the name of the video is, and you can go there anytime you want. They're all up here. I think it's called Dragon Details That Will Blow You Away, but hold on a second. And at least that way there, yeah, here it is right here. Let me go and see what it is called so that you can look it up. It's Mud Fossil University is my site, and I had to do this because of the reaction from mainstream media and from academia. So I started my own university called Mud Fossil University on YouTube, no charge. All right, yeah, it's called Dragon Details That Will Blow You Away. And as soon as you go up there, you have to watch the whole thing. It's, well, it's 24 minutes. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but very quickly you'll understand exactly what it is. All right, Bridgette, I'm sorry for taking up your little time here. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, the show is about you. So, I'm just here. Oh, uh-oh. Are you still there, Roger?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good. Okay. The screen changed a little bit, and I thought, I dumped you again. But we're good. We're still good. So the reason I wanted to have you on the show is because, I've been following you for a while, and the information is, like, outstanding. You can't, you start to see it, what people are presenting by Google Earth. Recently, I saw a guy who put out a video who did a Google Earth thing on this tree that was like, its leaves dropped like something 6 miles, right? Showed the tree, the branches, and these giant leaves, this is kind of like how I got started into it. I grew up in a really strange family that had old stories and different kinds of things. So when our family would get together around campgrounds, I would be in the tent supposedly sleeping, but I would hear my family talk about all of the beings, the Sasquatch, the giants, a lot of these beings that supposedly, most people never talk about. But I came from a family that these stories were passed down, that they knew that there had been, these things without a shadow of a doubt. So I grew up in a family where I was lucky. My mind, was pretty open to a lot of new information, and I kind of navigate towards things that really kind of make me think. So, the Mud Fossil University thing was just, mind blowing for me. And then I think it's, the Devil's Post pile is said to be, a tree stump, basically. It's not rock. So the thing is...
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. I got to correct you on that.
What is it? A body?
Every one of the, Devil's Tower?
Yeah.
All right. That is the foot of a giant. Now, I can say that with absolute certainty because the fibrils, which you see as those basalt columns, they call them, and they think they're volcanism causing those basalt hexagon columns. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Those are CaCO3. Okay, calcium carbonates. And they are also covered with that fascia that I was talking about, that synovial sheath, which is kaolin clays here and there. You see that little rusty-looking color and a yellow-looking color. That's blood. And that is from the kaolin clays that originally coated those fibers. And they stay separated in death just as they did in life. That's why I'm finding all these mud fossils completely separated from the organs I'm finding are just absolutely like somebody cut them out with a scalpel, washed them all down, cleaned every little bit of detail off them, and left the fascia coating the organ. Absolutely flawless detail.
So,
so it's like better than any anatomical model that's ever been made.
Yeah, so basically our whole planet, mountain ranges and all this other stuff could actually be giants and the predecessors to Earth and dragons and other astronomically large beings, including, trees, right?
Well, the trees. Here's the thing. I know the one you're talking about, Mr. B33.
Yeah.
Yeah, he, and that was great. And yes, and as a matter of fact, I have also found things over there. I found petals from flowers that were, I think they were, I don't know, a quarter of a mile tall. Just the petals from the flower. And I mean, absolutely no question. Somebody came up on the site after I posted the video about it, and they were a florist or something like that, and they said, yep, you're right. I mean, you can see everything about it, no question. Madagascar, but now, here's the thing with the trees. And here's the thing about plants in general. They're cellular. All right. That means that they're like made in little tiny blocks. There's a bazillion little tiny square blocks. And when they petrify from the salt waters, which is what happened. This was from the Great Flood. Everything that I am displaying in mud fossils is a result of the Great Flood. And the Great Flood happened, is just recorded. I'm just saying it recorded, and there's no question it happened. And what happened was it was the salty water, just like the same as the body chemistry, very similar to the body chemistry. And I'm going to tell you another thing. I think that the whole thing was exactly what it says in Revelations 12. It says there was a woman standing on the moon, giving birth, and a dragon came down to try to eat the baby when she was giving birth. That's what it says. And then God came down, took the child up to his throne, and then Michael came down and threw the angel, threw the devil, Satan, the devil, to earth, along with his other crew of guys, because they defeated those guys, and threw them to earth and said, "Woe unto earth, because you just got your devil." It's exactly what it says. Now, I found the dragon. That dragon's 900 miles long. It's 900 miles long. Now, I also found underneath that dragon a fish that was being attacked by that dragon. Now, the fish was where? In the Bible was Jesus and that type of thing. Always talking about a fish. And they always talked about the Leviathan, and they always talked about the behemoth. Now, that dragon, and that is a dragon, there is not a human being alive can tell me that's not a dragon, is attacking that fish, and there's nobody can tell me that's not an attack, because that venom that was spit all over that fish is identical to snake venom. And the fish flesh is corroded from where the snake venom dragon stuff landed on his fin and all over his back. I mean, that's just what it is. Now, then you say, well, what does a fish and a dragon do? It's fish doing in the desert. Well, you can look right below that, and you can see where they call the Eye of the Sahara. It's in Mauritania. And that Eye of the Sahara is not an eye. It was Atlantis. It's identical to Atlantis, what Plato says in his Timaeus. Timaeus, something like that. And he gives the exact layout of it, and Herodotus puts it right there exactly. You look at Herodotus' map from 450 BC, it is exactly where the Eye of the Sahara is, which has the rings that were exactly described by Plato, and it is the exact colors of metals that were, this thing was coated with metals, the walls, and it's leaking these, what they call transition metal complexes into you can see the colors. It's colors, let me put that. And also there's the straits there, the whole thing. And you can see all of that stuff has run out into the ocean because it collapsed. And that's all recorded. So it collapsed, I believe, during this attack. And there is a story out of Korea that said the dragon went to confront her people and to destroy them, and did so, and then came back. Now, I don't know, this dragon's still there. I mean, it really is, it's just so bizarre. But all of these things are written in history. So I'm going to every single thing that was written in history, and I will not deny a word, because there's much more when you start reading Ovid and Hesiod and Herodotus and all of these people, Plato. I mean, they weren't liars. So anyway, now it's up to you, Bridget. Take it from here, kid.
Okay, so I want my listeners to know that you can go to Mud Fossils University, which is a free university on YouTube that Roger's put up, and he can show you visually all the things that he's talking about. He has scientific data that stands, in clear claim of the claims that he's making. And he's also pulling together historical work in order to also find the truth. So one of the things I'm going to ask you is, so a lot of the stones and stuff that you're finding and had tested, they were from mitochondria, which is the mother's DNA.
That's all I had tested for. Well, all I really wanted to do, I had expected, honestly, Bridget, I had expected some interest by the people that are selling knowledge. They're saying, here's the story. Here's what you got to believe this, and then you're educated. Go out and get a job because you're smart. You give me $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, and I will tell you how to be smart if you say the things I say and you're educated. It doesn't work that way. If they come to Mud Fossil University, and I want everyone to come because we're going to start classes very soon. I have somebody who's coming on board, Jody, who is fabulous. She is a firecracker. She's going to get this. We've got to straighten out education. It's not working. You don't go in and somebody tells you, read that book. You come back and you tell me what you read, and then I say you're educated. Go out and into the world. No. In Mud Fossil University, we all contribute to each other. I don't do all this stuff myself. Everybody is coming and saying, well, what do you think about this? What about that? Did you see this? Oh, I don't know about that because this happened. And have you ever considered this? And what do the Indians say about that? And and it's just absolutely fabulous. The amount of information that's out there that just is not even it's like it's not there. And my stuff is not there to 99.9% of humanity. So anyway, Roger, as they say.
Well, I've been doing old school traditional osteopath work, which I learned from a lot of really old people. It was a lot of it is passed down. It's from heritages where you pass down, and it's mostly, it covers every part of a human being, in health, from structure to your energy field to herbs to nutrition, the whole 9 yards. And you would be surprised what I've gone through in over 25 years in private practice. And I've been threatened with arrest. I've been all kinds of...
What are you doing? What are you offering for relief for these people?
It's all hands-on stuff. It's all like, how the body works, how the mechanics work. I mean, most systems in the body are hydraulic pumps. We're like machines,
Now we're talking, because I love this stuff. I have, like I say, I'm looking at the rocks, which were the people. These were the people. This is not just rocks.
No, that they were just people. So explain to listeners who don't have any exposure. They were people by mitochondria DNA, so they had human mothers. But some of these people were huge. Can you tell us, what the estimates of maybe one of the largest giants that existed? If you,
many miles.
Like tall.
Yes, many. Now, and not only on Earth. Comet 67P, who I followed that from before. The European Space Agency sent up, it's called a Rosetta mission, and it was called the Philae lander. And it went up there and flew out into space, and it was years going up there and to rendezvous with this comet, 67P, Churyumov-Gerasimenko or something like that. Now, they get out there, they actually land on the comet. As they're heading out there, they call it like a rubber duck. It's got a ball on one end and then a neck and then coming out the other end. So I'm looking at this from when they're flying up on it, and I'm thinking that thing is a tendon. It's an enthesis. It's tendon enthesis. And what a tendon enthesis is, it's a ball that inserts into what they call tuberosity, which is holes in your other bones and so forth. It's a tendon ball, and then it has a neck that comes out of it. So the ball is surrounded by flesh, let's say, or bone. And then the neck of it comes out, and then it flares out into muscle tissue and connective tissue, and then it, on the other end, connects back into a bone somewhere, and that's how you pull your bones back and forth to each other. That's how your tendons work. And that ball can rip out of your tendon socket, and it is very painful. Now, this particular tendon that is in space is, I believe, an Achilles tendon, which is the heel tendon, and then it comes up to the tendon that leads up to your calf muscle. And as soon as it leads away from the tendon, which is a white fibrous material, that's a CaCO3, and that is a particular chemical makeup that is called collagen 1, I think collagen 1, 2, 4, and 6, or somewhere in that area. But there's 26, 28 different collagens that they know about. And these are different materials that make up the mats and webbing in your body. Some of them protect from acids in your kidneys and your bile ducts, and some of them protect from salts in your, other areas. And then you got them in your, you're a complete, absolute, unbelievable mix of materials that have to do different jobs. Your veins and arteries, those blood vessels are so like noble gases. They don't do anything. They're just benign, and all they are is in tubing. And I'm going to tell you something. I had a guy, Gary Evans, over in England, found a lung in a mud flat. And here's what happened with this lung. It was in the mud flat, and when you get them in the fine salt water mud flats, salt water is what we live in. Inside of your skin, you're just a bag full of salt water and then a bunch of different fibers and things running through it and the rest. No. So everything lives there. It loves salt water. It's just give me 7.2 salt water. I'll stay there all day. I'm just having a good time. Well, your bones do not want to be flushed with salt water. So anything that dies in salt water and is waterlogged in salt water will leach out, first of all the volatile organics. And the volatile organics are the things that make you bloat and blow up and fester and all that stuff out in the sun. Well, when they're in the water, in the salt water, it's in the same solution you're in already, and it is able to remove that stuff without having that degradation. However, the bones do not do that. The bones, because of the phosphates and so forth, and the calcium, very reactive stuff in salt waters, that ends up, and they've never ever found a body, a skeleton inside of a saltwater vessel after it wrecked and the people died. And there's none of them in the Titanic. No, they've never found one. So anyway, the bones dissolve and the flesh is protected, and that is what happens with mud fossils. So here's what happens. Now you got a waterlogged chunk, a mass of a body, which is still structurally in the same condition that body was in, and they normally sink into the mud. That's why I call them mud fossils. I named them mud fossils. Now, there's other things that are like shale fossils, like the leaves and stuff they see where they're in between the little layers. Those are, some people call those mud fossils. Those are shale fossils. Those are laminated little leaves and things. These are complete creatures. And I have the heads of things. We found everything. I literally, just almost every single body part. And, they're all over, and they are gigantic. I personally, here right now, have 3 things that were DNA tested. And one of them is from a normal-sized human being. It's a lung, and it is so perfectly a lung. there's no way to deny it. And additionally, it was DNA test, CAT scan, the anatomist. All these were done in all those three manners. Now, that is the size of a normal human being. Then the second one that I had done was a giant human fingertip, which I have the entire hand, which is 3 feet wide, the hand. I don't have the entire hand, but I have the hand, the palm, and several fingers, and a knuckle, and there's a bunch of other stuff out there. I just don't even bother getting it because it's just out there. And that was DNA tested, and that is about 50 to 60 feet tall. That. Then the big one was in the back. I went out and took off the outer layer of skin. This thing is so perfect. You can see the fingernail, and that fingernail is not a scruffy, nasty-looking fingernail. That would somebody that just went and had their fingers coiffed. It is absolutely flawless. And on the other side, the fingered print is still there, absolutely pristine. And I took off a chunk of the fingerprint and went under that because it's called grip skin. The grip skin on your fingers and your toes is a very dense, thick, heavy layer. It's about, half inch thick or so. So I popped a piece of that off about the size of, 6-inch diameter. And then under that, you can see the blood vessels. And you look for the little tubing in there. There's little holes, and they run through. And the black ones, like I said, are the veins. And the other color, it's either going to be red or completely clear or yellow. That is the arterial side. So then you drill, of course you got to use a bleach and do everything right, so you don't contaminate it, because you could pick up DNA easy. However, this DNA, when this was submitted, it was dense. He told me this stuff was dense. And because I went into the arterial blood supplies, right, with a little pick drill. You go down in there, you don't need much of it, and they go in and they do whatever they do, and they run a whole bunch of little tests and have all these little colored bar things, and it came back mitochondrial cytochrome B and whatever it was. There's 2 regions, cytochrome B and something else. But that's what they look for. There's 2 specific markers.
So how big would have been the big finger tip? How big of the person would that have been?
About 200 feet, a little over 200 feet, somewhere in that area.
Tall.
Yeah, tall. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of other parts from them right there, just laying on the ground. It's laying there.
Yeah, and this is stuff's in your backyard, right?
Yeah. Well, I have. It's not just like my backyard. I have some property, but it's not. It's in the woods more or less. And here I'm in a place where they used to make stone walls. I got to tell you the truth. I'm doing really no work here to speak of. All these stone walls are all over the place. You just got to go over and look at them. You look at them, and it's there. And not every stone you're going to be able to pick it out. But they in New England, they made all these stone walls. They took all the stones out from the fields. And like I said, every single stone, I'm going to tell you this, I will stand by this statement. Every single stone on the ground that is not from lava or from volcanic sources was originally a part of some creature or plant. It was biology somewhere. I'll stand by that statement 100%. And
so basically, we're getting smaller, right? Every time there's an extinction, we're getting smaller. Everything's getting smaller.
Yeah, we are absolutely. But what happened was, I go back to what was written, and if you go back to the statements about Adam and about the Titans and about the Olympians and about all of that stuff, I believe every word of this now. And the reason I believe all that is because I've done the research that supports it all. If you saw, have you seen any of my stuff that shows these giant, they look like they're frozen in time, and they're like marbleized guys. They're standing there fighting somebody else, and all of a sudden they're just stuck there.
No, I haven't seen those yet, but I have seen a lot of the giant skulls that are everywhere that you showed, and some of them still, I think there were a couple that people think that they're like a a sculpture that somebody chiseled because it still shows their like military hat on, their combat hat.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Well, I'm going to read
Okay.
something. I have to pick this up. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Because, all right, here it is right here. Now, this is from, like I say, you have to go back to the things that were written way, 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 way back. Now, this is from a book called Metamorphosis. And this is by Ovid, O-V-I-D. And this is about Medusa. And everybody knows Medusa, you look at her, you turn to stone. Well, how could that possibly be? Well, nobody thinks it's real. Well, that's what happened to those guys. And I've gone and I haven't actually touched them or anything, but you don't have to touch them. I can see the anatomy after the surfaces have decomposed from some of these structures where they're, like you said, they're stuck in time. They look like they're right in the middle of doing something, and they're just frozen. And they are decomposing now, and you can see the blood work, you can see the tendons, you can see all that stuff. And I've done a bunch of videos on them. They get a lot of hits. I get 375,000 hits on one of them that shows a guy holding something up. It's the Del Marie Metagrossa, something like that. But anyway, this is what was written, and this is in the Metamorphosis, and that is a fabulous book. Here, listen to this. This is book 5, from 200 to 249, where Phineas is turned to stone. Now, this is about Medusa, and they were going to kill her. Now, it says they all deserved the punishment they suffered, except one of Perseus's warriors. While he was fighting on his side, Aconteus saw the Gorgon's head and took the shape of hardened stone. Astyages struck him with his long sword, thinking he was still alive, and the blade gave a high-pitched, ringing noise. While Astyages stood there amazed, the same power transformed him, and he remained there with a wondering look on his marble face. It would take a long time to tell the names of the middle ranks of men. 200 bodies survived the fight. 200 bodies were turned to stone at the sight of the Gorgon's head. Imagine that.
Wow. I was thinking about, have you seen that video? I mean, this is like, we'll talk about current time with some of these beings, but they were talking about, I had read, when I was young, because I live in Nevada, I read Sarah Winnemucca's book, and her tribe, she talks at length in that book, Princess Winnemucca, Paiute. She talks at length in that book. It's from like the turn of the century, about the red-headed races, which were the giants, but they would steal the Paiutes' children here in Nevada, and they would eat them. And then the Paiutes confronted them, and they said, no more of this. So then they started stealing the dead bodies and eating them. And that's when the Paiutes decided as tribes that they would rise against them and, kill them all. Right. So it had to be like a major, major battle, because you think about that video of the guys, there's like 3 guys now that were ground military that went into I think like a part of Afghanistan or something like that, and there was a cave there, and they were traveling through the desert, and they said they saw all these bones, human bones, animal bones, and the stench was really gnarly. This big cave, it's on, they keep taking it off of YouTube, but now they're all coming forward saying this is what happened. I think it was like 2006 or 2008 or something like that, and they ended up having the giant came out and attacked them, and they ended up having to kill the thing. But there were like a whole bunch of military people that died in the battle, and they have, more modern day weaponry. I mean, they were shooting everything they had at this giant. It just went on and on and on, and then they finally killed it. And then the government, sent in a major helicopter, and the helicopter could barely lift the whole load. They bundled this giant up, tethered it with a rope, and then carried it to, a secure base. But, yeah.
I'll interrupt you if I can. I went to see Jurassic Park the other day with my brother. And you know, these gigantic creatures. Oh, these gigantic creatures. Well, the dragon that's in Morocco would not even know if one of those creatures was on. Had no idea. It would be smaller than a tick. You follow me?
Yeah, the creature would have been so small comparatively to the giant dragon.
Right. It wouldn't even know it was there. It would be a tick. It wouldn't even be a tick. It would be an amoeba. The scale is so incredible. But by the way, I'm getting back to that one about Madagascar, the tree. The reason trees...
Oh, hold on 1 second, Roger. 4 minutes. We got a break.
Okay.
We'll mute and be back in a few.
Good.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey, all right. Well, we're back to Roger. Are you still with us there?
I am still here.
Awesome. All right. So we were back with Carrying Stones and Digging Holes. I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And if you can find me on Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, Facebook, and also you can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project. And also on my website, coe-llc.com. And we're talking to Roger Spurr, and he is the, multi-functioning unit that He's created Mud Fossils University, which is a free online college to help re-educate people in science and lots of different things. He's going to have a lot of people on. So when are your classes going to start for the Mud Fossil University?
I believe they'll be starting next week. When I say classes, what they're going to be is basically lectures. And they're going to be about what we have accumulated at Mud Fossil University together with, not just me, but everybody combining together has come up with these conclusions. And then we'll discuss them. If they're valid, they're valid. If they're not, they're not. But they can't be denied and they can't be dismissed. So what needs to be done is experiments and research and testing and discussion. And that is the way you learn. You don't learn any other way. And I'm telling you something right now. There is so much to learn that there's so much wrong. It's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and it's across the board, especially with healthcare. I mean, one of the things that I've recently started doing is I put myself out to do, long distance healthcare consulting, because so many people don't really understand their diagnoses, but they don't really understand what kind of medications they are. They don't really understand kind of maybe what their choices are. Some people don't have, a lot of choices. But, if you do have some choices and lifestyle changes and stuff like that, because the more stuff that's coming out about, what healthcare is doing to people, it's horrific. So, of course, they would, mislead us with all kinds of information. Can you imagine, this is the way I look at it. If most people knew what was really happening or had gone on or is going on versus what they think is going on, they would stop paying their mortgage. The whole system at this point may come to a screeching halt, why people have to have a serious, massive mental breakdown in order to be able to deal with, the truth.
Well, it's a tough thing to deal with. It's a hard thing, but I want to address this health thing because now that you're a naturopath type of person, I'm sure.
No, I'm a traditional osteopath, so it's kind of older than that. I mean, okay. You've always had people. Let me ask you this:
Do you recommend a lot of drug therapy or no?
Well, it depends on, drug therapy. Is that pharmaceutics or is that pharmacy?
Let's take it one step further. Let me tell you here, this is how I feel health should be addressed. And the one thing I feel, the terrible worst thing that's going on right now, is there is no norm for the human body. Now, I know what's normal because I can see in my mud fossils the same accumulations of the same chemicals in the same places of every same mud fossil. There is no difference. I can tell what happens in the joints. I can tell where the skin is. I can tell where the kidneys are. I can tell where every single of the body, and they are transition metals. Now, most physicians, or really almost nobody, understands carboxylation and transition metals, and I'm just going to explain them because it's the most important thing in your whole body, and they call them trace elements. Now, what is in your body is obviously you have the blood, and then you have intake of different products coming into you. Crush them up, you grind them up in your mouth. Saliva works on them. That's breaking them down. There's different enzymes. There's this and that. Well, excuse me. These products have to be broken down and then reworked with the chemistry. So it goes into your stomach in an acid solution, very, very highly acid. Breaks them all down. Acids have a lot of extra electrons. They attach and they break and they disassociate. They do all kinds of things. So now you got all these different little things in your stomach floating around, little bits and pieces saying, what do I do now? And they say, well, you go out through the bottom, it's called the lumen, which takes, and it says, all right, you're too acid to go out there. You're going to ruin everything, so we're going to change it back to being a 7.2, something like that, pH, whatever it is. I'm just making that number up, but it's in the neutral range. And then it goes down into your intestine, and what is it bringing with it? It's bringing in whatever you just ate. and so there's going to be some coming out of the ground. There's every single metal and mineral and carbon and all these things are coming out of the ground, and you're eating them up, and they need to be absorbed in the correct way, in the correct quantities. And what does that? Well, what actually does that is the transition metals. And because now these little things are in little tiny bits and pieces, and they have charges to them, positive and negative charges to them, salts and acids. All right? These metals come around, and they are what they call transition metal complexes. Right? I know this is getting a little technical, but we need to talk this through technically, because it really is simple if you listen. These metals float around in your body, and they are in your blood everywhere, and they have the different colors. The metals are what create the colors, and these metals attach to these minerals. And at 1 pH, because they can change with one single electron, these metals. And so at 7.4 pH, let's say, they attach to oxygen. And then they carry that oxygen out and into a place where it has another pH, 7.2 at your feet, let's say. And it says, I'll take the oxygen because I have a better pH, and it wants to come to me. And then that other stuff will go back by another piece of metal going back through your body up to your lungs and your heart, and it will recharge it. So it works by a plus and minus pH in your body. If you might, hopefully I didn't confuse everybody, I'm sure I did. But you start at a higher pH in one section of your body, which attaches to a certain molecule, and like carbon dioxide, or it actually attaches oxygen. Then it gets to your feet, and it wants that oxygen because your feet want to move around and need oxygen. So it says, I have an electron, I'll take it. The carbon dioxide is used, that comes back. So anyway, it's all chemistry. Now, when that gets into your intestines, the only way that those metals are there is because of bacteria. And you're going to say, well, what's bacteria got to do with the metals? Bacteria do exactly the same thing they do in you as they do in the waste treatment plants. They use them to harvest metals. Now, what about the bacteria? Now, if you ever had antibiotics, any of that kind of stuff, you got a problem. Unless you can have gotten back your standard bacteria, which it doesn't just grow by itself. You have to reestablish it somehow. Well, some of it grows by itself, but mostly it's damn hard to get it back to where it's supposed to be. That gives you bowel problems, digestive problems. You don't get the things you need. You get more of the stuff you don't need. There's all kinds of disruptive bowel problems, leaky gut, and all that stuff. So, point being is you have to have the correct bacteria in your body to create enzymes. The bacteria create the enzymes create the metals. So it starts at the bacteria. And if antibiotics get your bacteria, you're done. And they said that kids that are autism kids have 40% less bacteria in their gut. They have all kinds of issues with their stomach, digestive issues, and so forth. And I know as well. I took antibiotics for having a tooth thing, whatever it was, a root canal, and man, I almost died. I was going to the doctor, all kinds of problems. Never said anything about be sure you don't do this or that, and he knew what my problems were. So anyway, that's
yeah.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, for the record, I'm anti-Western medicine. And over, when I was 38, I'll be 50 this year, I went back to school because I wanted to grow my own plant medicine so that I could give my clients, so I'd have like a full, but I wanted to grow the medicines myself because I wanted to have a relationship with the plants, and I wanted, to break them apart properly and use the right parts, whatever else. And so I ended up going to biodynamic college. And I actually really fell in love with and did some farming internships and really fell in love with microbial medicine, which is a certain kind of way that biodynamic composts differ from lots of other composting. And, really, really started to sort out like what is being done to the planet right now by whoever. whether you want to call it the powers that be or the elites or the scientists or whoever else, it's just mass sterility. And when there's mass sterility, there's not going to be able to be any kind of life, because everything needs bacteria, everything needs microbes. And because you take that stuff in, and that's how your body figures out what your environment is like, through taking in other, plants and animals and things like that have different kinds of bacterias on them, or
now,
microbes.
I need to break in on you, because this is the most important thing of our generation. I'm going to tell you right now, just what you said. Do you know what they're doing with 5G?
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of that. It's unbelievable. I think that's why all of California is on fire right now.
Well, here's the issue, and every single person is listening, and every single person that they can tell, and every single person that they can tell should say something and get a hold of your legislatures, because they did not test this. They don't know anything about this. They are being pushed by the telecom commissions, and 5G will kill insects. What it does, it's microwave radiation. It is not allowed on Earth. The atmosphere will not allow it here. So they have to put up multiple cell towers on your same street, because it says, don't do that here. And they say, well, screw you. I'm going to put 2 towers up, and who cares about you, Earth? And they make it, and insects don't have any skin to speak of. Insects, bacteria, cells, seeds, they are going to be shaken violently. This particular radiation, this exact distance of wavelength, and trust me, I study this extremely well. This particular frequency shakes water molecules, H2O specifically.
And where are they putting a lot of the, I was horrified. I was in Sacramento, and I couldn't believe when I was down there. This was like right before this was in April, I think, when 5G went online in California in May. And I could not believe that they would have the little square, 5G components. They had them strapped all the way around the water tower there in Sacramento. And I started to notice, like, so I'm going to ask you something, Roger, that may be a little bit more controversial than what we're talking about. But okay, so there was this mass extinction that happened by water. So there's a lot of tribes who, at every extinction, because they were the original people or have the original genetics from the original people that were started here on the planet. And so a lot of them sometimes get saved. And so the Hopis, a lot of the native tribes are saying that the prophecies, which are oral history, which are not myth, and they say we're in the 5th extinction, and that, like the Hopi believe that they've been through every extinction that there's been, and at some points in time, other beings came and took them, inside the earth where they lived for a while, until it was safe to come back on Earth. So do you think that at one point in time that maybe something cataclysmic was switched on so that there was the extinction of a lot of the beings that, you're seeing in the mud fossils? Like, because it seems like to me there was just a massive wipeout across the board in order to create all the mud fossils. And maybe...
Well, yeah, it was the Great Flood. Here, I can explain it. It's very simple. Right now, they have no clue about dating. They say, carbon dating. There's no way they can. Carbon carboxylates. It moves. It never fixes. They thought it fixes. It doesn't. Rocks transition. Your body transitions. Everything transitions down to quartz. So it's totally ridiculous. Now, when you go to the KT boundary, which is a layer of clay which contains iridium, that, they claim, is 65 million years ago, and that was the result of a Yucatan Peninsula meteor impact. And most people understand. 65 million years ago, Yucatan Peninsula, meteor crashes, debris all over the earth, kills the dinosaurs, case is closed. Leaves a layer of ash, which is not ash, it is clay. Now, it contains some iridium, and which is very rare on Earth, I agree. It does not concentrate usually. However, it's a very durable mineral, and it's found in the skin, as clay is. Your body and everyone's body, their skin is clay. It's clay. And it's kaolin clays. And it's and there's this chemical formula to it, but it comes in the same colors as the human races do. And it's kaolin clay, very fine clay, and that is what is the flexible, gooey stuff that makes up your outer body, and it actually works within your muscles and all that business. But anyway, that kaolin clay, during the flood, eroded from the skin. All right, that kaolin clay contained uridium and all the other minerals. And that kaolin clay is what killed, is literally a gigantic bathtub ring around the earth. And that was from the Great Flood, not from any impact. That impact never happened. I looked at all of the research about that, and it did not happen. What they claim is shock quartz is not shock quartz. It is the crystals that are found within lungs, and they are stunning looking, I agree. But they are within the lungs, and I now think that these crystals that are in your lungs do the carbonic acid discharge. Now, what that means, carboxylation takes with these metals all through your body, and it brings them back up to the lung, and you discharge gases and all these different things, turn them into carbonic acids, carbon. That's why you carboxylate. Anyway, a catalytic converter in a car has a certain chemistry that attaches to certain molecules to burn them up or do whatever it does, but it destroys them. It changes them. And that's what happens in the lungs. And there is all these different colored quartz crystals looking things. They're not quartz, but they're silicates, and they contain these metals, and they contain them in flashy looking things. And they're in crystals, and the blood circulates around them, and I think somehow that crystal changes the gases in the blood and exchanges it so you can blow it out in your breath. Because that's not, anyway, what I'm getting at, I've gone deep into the chemistry, into the core drillings, into the, the sonographs, every little detail that they've done. They called it draining the Yucatan, draining the ocean, draining the Great Lakes. I've gone through all of them. It's all creatures underneath, all creatures.
Right. Hey, so I have a question for you,
Yeah.
or assessment. So could the periodic extinctions be designed? For example, if there was somebody standing on the moon giving birth, that person could actually throw a rock, and hit Earth with it, right?
Yeah. Well, I can explain to you my theory on the entire flood, the whole thing, from start to bottom.
Well, hold on one second with that, but I was thinking, so someone or something could have created the extinctions that we had before by design.
Right.
And so now, hold on one second. So now, though, those maybe same somethings or same someones have been in the process of maybe, say, try to create modern extinction through using vaccines, 5G, healthcare, radiation, bombs. I mean, all kinds of different things that aren't really working to kind of move our population. So the next thing would have maybe for them to do is turn our world upside down. I wonder if there's beings big enough that could actually turn the planet. I mean, they've got to have some kind of technology, to flip it, or create something that causes a wobble in it and it flips. So, I mean, as far as like modern day life, we may be, going through some kind of extinction event that's being caused directly by something or someone that needs to replace us, put a replacement beings on the planet and start over again, or try a different experiment. What are your thoughts?
Well, that could possibly be that. I can't really comment on. I go for the material things, and here's my assessment of exactly what happened, and it is exactly what was written. The Titans and Gaia are the actual Earth. They are the actual Earth, and they were able to throw mountains, and they built the Earth around these creatures, and they're literally lying dormant as creatures that will last literally forever. Then the offspring of these gods became really crazy, insane people, and I think the real God finally decided, this is crazy, I got to go down and straighten this out. And at some point, he needed to have his son go in there, and he needed his son of God, which was the one born on the moon, maybe. And at that point, she would have to broke her waters at one point, and the waters would have flooded the earth with the birth.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
All right, now wait, it gets better.
Right. Okay, yeah, no, I want to hear it.
Way better. All right, now the dragon comes in. He's fighting for the kid. God comes down and says, no, I'm taking him. He's mine. He goes up to his throne. He saves a woman in the wilderness, it says. And Michael steps in, and they have battles in heaven that rage. Now, that's where I think Comet 67P is, because everything is fallen on Earth. Not one single thing, Bridgette, that falls on this Earth was not from a living creature. I have studied every single meteorite I can find, and I have meteorites here, and they are from living creatures. Comet 67P is meat in space. Nobody can deny that. Even NASA now agrees that it's so biological, they said, that they can't even give it a name. So organic. That's their exact words. It's so organic they can't give it a name. It's not biological. It's not frozen ice whatsoever. And when you see those things shooting off, those jets of gas and so forth, that is when the sunlight is hitting right into a blood vessel and literally boiling the blood that's down in that blood vessel and shooting it out as a ray of uncooked meat smoke. And the astronauts, when they go out on their meat walks,
a little Freudian slip.
When they go out on their, oh my God, when they go out on their spacewalks, they come back in and they take their suit off and they say it smells like sirloin steak. I'm not kidding you. This is all true. And Comet 67P, like I say, is meat in space. So there you go with the dragon. We know where the dragon is. We know there's meat in space from the battles. We know that there was water, could have possibly come from this event. Now, what else would have come from a birth in space? There would be afterbirth. There would be blood. There would be the placenta. There would be umbilical cord. Now, what does it say in there? Now, this all happened now at the birth of Christ, and the Bible only started 3500 BC. So that's when they needed the food in the desert, the manna, which happens to be dried milk, which happens to be dried placenta. Because at the moment of birth, the placenta is engorged with lactic acid, lactose proteins. I forget what the name of them, but anyways, milk. And that would have come through our atmosphere as atomized. It wouldn't come through one big lump. It would turn like into a mist, but it would not hit the Earth during the day, and it never did because it would burn up during the daylight times. It's very intense radiation, but it did come down during the night, and it had to be harvested right away because it would go bad, and that's what fed the Jews in the desert. And Jesus said, "It was my body that came out of space and fed your ancestors in the desert. I was the bread came down from heaven." That's what it said. Are we still here?
Yeah.
Still here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just had to wrap my mind around humans eating human, or at least mitochondrial human DNA.
Yeah, there's more to it. When they said, first of all, the water flooded the earth. So we got the flood. Now, hopefully everything's gone. God's Son is getting ready to come down and take over. They trying to get the Jews out of the desert, and the manna is feeding them. Now, there also is written that, and you know, Velikovsky, who is he's a hero. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is the biggest hero in history, and you should do this. Emanuel Velikovsky, Velikovsky with a V, and absolutely amazing guy. And he went and studied all of the records from ancient history, and it's all written down. It's all written down. And Venus is only 3,500 years old. Planet Venus is only 3,500 years old. That is written in every single culture on the face of this earth. And everybody thought it was a joke. But it's written, and it showed up as a comet, a fiery comet, they said. And then it almost hit the Earth, and it did apparently it caused Mars to go die.
Yeah, they say, because they say that it caused such an electrical, new scientists now are saying that Venus and Mars would have almost collided because Venus left a major electrical scar on Mars. Isn't it? Is that correct? The new science.
I don't know about the electrical part, but it's very likely it could. Because all of these, there's so much they don't understand about this universe. There is so much.
But I think it's that they don't want to. You know what I mean?
Well,
I think that we've kind of been controlled for, I think, the belief systems or the experiment. That's kind of how I feel like we're more like an experiment. And then when they get tired of certain experiments, they kind of get rid of us.
Well, Max Planck said that science changes one funeral at a time.
One funeral.
Once they come up with a theory, they're gonna beat you to death if you try to go against it.
Yeah, but I mean, what's more sinister though is they hide everything. I mean, the reason why they don't want places like the Vatican to go down, and that, you know, the mass populace, they get to go in there and go take a look at what they've got downstairs. I mean, people would be mortified to see what they have, you know, because
I'm sorry. I got to tell you something though.
Yeah.
I got to tell you this. I just can't forget this.
Okay.
I've been working on looking at the Earth and the things that were said, and there's a lot of statements about the Earth is hollow, and people have talked about this for you know, all of the ancient cultures say they went into the Earth. I know you talked about this just a few minutes ago, and so I'm working with Jody this morning, and we're looking this and looking that. And Tibet and up in that area, they have their city within the earth. It's called Xibalba. Now, then we're looking at Peru and all the other places, because we're looking at the Emerald Tablets and Thoth and all the statements he was making, because I believe they're all true. And he claims
me too.
that,
me too.
Now we go down to South America and Peru. Their underworld is Xibalba. You follow me?
Oh yeah. Yep.
In the highlands of the Himalayas, they know their underworld is where there's people. They say there's Shangri-La or whatever it is, one of those huge metropolises is down there, and it is called Xibalba. And the Andy Indians, the same things, the Peruvian Indians, same word, same place. So now I'm looking at the Earth as a possible, you know, opening in the Earth. It would be round, and then I'm thinking, how would these people stick to the inside of the Earth? And the work I've been doing on the light and everything, I don't know if you know about this, but gravity and everything is magnetic. There is no neutrons. There's no neutrons in atoms. You know, everybody, there's neutrons, there's protons, there's electrons. No, there's electrons, and then there is protons. The electrons flood the protons in the core until there is no more electrons will be accepted. And at that point, the core itself is still positive loosely, and pushes and still tries to pull in more electrons, but they can't get to the core because it's already flooded with electrons. And then they collect in their orbitals, in perfect little synchronous orbitals, out and over and over and over. Very, very simple. But once you put in neutrons, you're dead. So there's so much that, and the light experiments were showing absolutely prove there's ether. And ether is the particles that come from the sun to the earth to make light. They're not nothing. Einstein says, oh, they don't have any mass. Well, nothing, something that doesn't have mass is nothing. If it's nothing, it's nothing. It's not something and it's nothing. It's nothing is nothing. So that's nonsense. They're particles, and they are the electrons that are always being stimulated anyway. They're thrown off the sun as particles. That's what's coming to us, and they're dark in space. There's their dark matter. They just can't. They cannot agree with this because of Einstein and Morley Michelson or whoever they were with the double slit. They just, and then waves and flapping particles that are sometimes something and sometimes nothing, and it's amazing. And then even Einstein's E equals mc squared says that light is massless. That means energy is zero. Because if E equals a mass of 0 times anything, I don't care how big he makes the speed of light, if it's 0 of mass, it's not going anywhere. There's nothing. So energy equals 0. It's a complete nonsense. But you can't speak against it if you're in that realm, or they'll kill you.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think things are changing. I think there's, interesting stuff going on. I'm not so sure kind of, how the battle will be won, or if it will be won, or what's going to happen next for sure. But always, I'm like you, Roger. The more that I learn, the better. I would much rather leave this world having at least tried to attempt to discover truth, and also leave trying to, express the truth to people, so that, if indeed they can wake up, then they have the information there, instead of having to, like us, dig through levels and levels and years and years and years, to just get at part of the truth, or maybe just a section of it, or, even, 0.00001% of the truth, for sure. Hey,
well, if the things that I'm saying are true, and I have all the evidence, there's nobody that's challenged, not one challenge on the things that I present, because I don't present anything that I can't 100% support, at least above anyone else's evidence, which their evidence is theories 99.9% of the time. My evidence is factual, material, it's evidentiary, it's empirical, physical stuff. It's. I go back to the age of reason, and then they went to the age of enlightenment, where they just could come up with any kind of theory, and then that because they're enlightened, didn't matter if it made sense or not, and that's what happened. So we're going to have these courses, and we're going to start out with here's what the theory is. We're going to show it somehow. We're going to do it. I don't know. I'm sort of a wing it sort of guy. So I'll probably discuss it and just say, well, by the way, this is what they're saying, and here's what I'm saying. Here's what they're saying. Here's what we're saying.
Right.
And
no,
I
like that, and I like that there's a collaboration too of different people coming in and helping. So and all the work that you've done. With mud fossils, around mud fossils and stuff like that. What do you think for yourself was like the most like aha or like unbelievable moment of mind expansion in the work?
I can tell you, it was funny. It was funny. One day, like I say, I'm looking at these rocks. Everybody's thinking I'm crazy. Like, I'm serious, and they still are not good about this. People don't like to hear the truth about something. Even after I get the DNA test and everything, still, all the people that were negative about it don't want to hear about it. But anyway, I'm looking at all these rocks, and I'm cutting, and I got a saw, and I got a polisher, and I did all these things, and I got all this microscope, and, you know, I started really getting into it. So I'm out here looking one day, and I'm cutting this one rock. Well, I got a bunch of them that look pretty similar, and I'm thinking, there's probably nothing in there. I cut it. So I cut it in half. I looked, no, there's nothing in there. So it was soaking in a bucket. And here's the key. Excuse me. If you soak them in a bucket, they will absorb water. And anything that was, and if the bucket of water has a certain pH, and if it's like 7.3, 7.4, somewhere around there, the blood things that are in that rock will start to loosen up. They'll hydrate, all right, from the water. Now, so I cut this rock. It was probably in the water for a week or something, sitting out there, and then I wash them up. So I cut the rock, and I'm looking at, there's nothing here. So I come back a little later, and I look, and I say, holy smokes, there's a ruby in there. There's a little ruby. So I look at it, and I say, yeah, absolutely. So I wash it off, and I look, and it's gone. So I said, my mind's playing tricks on me. So I put it back down. I come back. It's back again. It was the blood leaking out of the rock. So I realized, I get the microscope. I started looking. Absolutely, it's blood. So I start to use this same technique on a lot of different things. And I had ones that were literally bleeding, gushing blood on my counter. I'm not lying. Absolute bubbles of blood coming out of them. And these were lungs. Now, the lungs and the hearts are the best preserved, and it's because of the blood. Blood does something that's called chelation. And the chelation means that these particular metal complexes that I talked about before that house the DNA and the hemoglobin and all of that stuff, because of ferrous oxide of iron is one of these metal complexes used to move things in the body and pick things up, like I spoke of. These metal complexes, including the DNA, all that stuff, will chelate, and chelate means to be surrounded with molecules that protect it. They sequester it. They keep it inside, locked in this cage. It's a cage. So that metal complex with all of this organic stuff is locked in this cage. And I forget where I was going with that.
The blood.
Well, that's why that's why it preserves so well, and that's why you find it in the heart and the lungs, and that's why there's blood everywhere. I mean, there's the DNA everywhere. And I sent all my stuff to Max Planck Institute years ago and to Harvard years ago. Of course, Yale, who they have no clue, want to see anything whatsoever, and none of them did. But so I never heard anything back from them. However, about a year or so ago, this was several years ago, as soon as I got the results 3 years ago, I sent it to every university I could find, hoping somebody would respond. Not one response. Now, about a year ago, I see that Max Planck and Harvard now are finding all the DNA you want in mud. They won't talk about the mud fossils, which is where it's coming from. They're talking about it's mud. DNA is mud. And then they can go into the mud and pick out the DNA fragments that they think are the creature that they're looking for by looking into databases. So,
well, and the other thing they won't talk about is like the mud is human, right? Mitochondrial.
They will talk about it being they're creatures, they're Cro-Magnon and all that business.
Oh yeah.
We have found, I have somebody, Tish, found a whole new species of creature. And it's not human, but it is hominid, and it is exact same architecture as human foot, except where we have tendons, which are the springs, they have springs, literal springs. And I have a video about that on there.
Mud Fossils University on YouTube channel, in case you want to go over there and have a look at Roger's stuff. Want to make sure and keep putting it out there. So one of the things I think when I started watching your channel was that really just blew my mind is like sometimes you would see like these rocks or a wall or I don't know if it was on your channel or someone else's, but then there would be like these statue like,
Oh, yeah, that was mine. That was me.
And then there would be holes, and then you could show where we thought that they're like rock statues that somebody carved, and it actually were megaliths, and it turns out to be a humanoid, mitochondrial humanoid, that was this rock structure statue that we think. And then Roger could show where the blood would come out. I think because you said the venous blood would have left sooner or be
the
vein
blood hardens. What happens in veins is you have what's called vein valves.
Oh, that's right.
Because veins will only go one direction, back to the heart and lungs to be refreshed. Now, the arteries have all these little capillary extensions going off the sides of them, go everywhere. And if you look at the Mars crab, this is going to blow your mind. The Mars crab, look it up on YouTube, or I have videos on my channel, but the Mars crab is a vein and an artery in the side of a mountain on Mars, and the mountain is the red planet because that is the red blood cells, literally dusting off of the striping that is the connective tissues that runs through the muscles. And this is a vein and an artery. The artery is at the bottom and has all the crab legs sticking out of it. It's eroded around it so you can see the crab legs going into the tissues. And directly above it, which always happens, is the artery. And that artery doesn't have these legs because it picks up at a further place down. It's just a collection device. It's not like a distribution device like the artery. And not only that, you can see the artery is red. And you can see the vein is a darker color, black.
Well, like we were talking about before, digging through that stone bone thing, right? That's like old, like you've collected, dug out. But on some of those videos you show, like later on, 2,000 years later, or even right now, all of a sudden it'll, start to leak juice, that shows up red and orange and all those different colors. And those can be scientifically tested that go back to blood, the metals in blood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're doing it. They're doing that. But what they're doing now is they're going to these cave sites where they said, Neanderthals occupied this site and the Cro-Magnon was over here and so forth. Now, so then they have a Cro-Magnon finger or a Neanderthal finger that they decided was a Cro-Magnon or a Neanderthal. They get the DNA out of that because everything has DNA now. They know it's everywhere now. So they get their DNA from what they think is what they're looking for. Then they go in the mud, and then they go and they analyze the mud. And the mud will give all different signatures for everything that's in there, every creature that ever was in there, that animals and plants and everything. Now, they're going to look for some little tag, which is valid. I can understand that. And they may have that same creature was in there. I can go along with that. Because if you get 100 base pairs in a row that are, and base pairs are these segments of DNA that are 100 base pairs in a row is like 40 bazillion, trillion, gazillion chance in one of being wrong. It's never going to happen. It's like hitting 100 in a row lottery number with 4 numbers on every number. Not going to do it. So if they find that number or that sequence in the mud, then I'll go along with it. It's what they think. Maybe it is that Cro-Magnon guy, but what's that big deal? These guys are all over the place. Now, what we have is engineered species that don't even have the same structure as a human. And I know this Tish has a site that has many of these, not just one, and they are complete creatures almost. She's got bones, she's got organs, she's got tools, she's got legs, she's got feet, she's got the springs. Absolutely phenomenal. I sent that to everyone. Tish and I tried to push this, not a single response. You know, if they don't find it, they're not interested. That's what I'm just telling you. And that was over a year ago. And I have that up there, too. And it's right here. I can tell you what it's called. I put it up, well, this is, again, I published it. First Engineered Species Certified by MFU. And so I'm telling you, that's the first engineered species that I know of ever been found. So,
but we don't know if we're engineered, right? We could be engineered too. We just don't know it.
Well, I would assume that something. I mean, have you ever looked? Well, I know you're into body chemistry, so obviously you know how all of these systems in the body work. It's so elegant. It's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing, the systems in the body. There's no way it just happened by accident. You know, this evolution is just absolute nonsense. Plus, they did find out that we are all from a very recent event. All life that is currently alive now, over 90%, they said, was created at the same time, and it was only about 100,000 to 200,000 years ago, is what they say. Now, I say no. It was about, I would say it's no more than 12,900 years ago. And I'm going to put it down at the event when Jesus or whoever God's son was born on the moon.
Right. But that's
put it down to that event.
Right, but that would be our current history that's going on right now with the type of humanoids. I mean, most of the humanoids that we have that are surviving now. That's when that would have started.
Every creature was wiped off the face of the earth, it says, basically.
Right.
Now,
but so
I'm not saying everyone, because I know that a ton of them survived.
Right, but we don't know how many times this has happened over and over and over again, where stuff's been destroyed and then something's been put back on here, and you know, create another, I don't know, interaction, I guess, or experience here.
Well, there's always going to be, you know, well, I don't know if it's always going to be it, but I'm going to go with the theory that the entire thing is going to be destroyed. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to be too long from now. I think the end things are happening right now, and it's all been written. It says it's going to come to an end. And my theory on ether here, if you look up what's happening in the solar system is heating up tremendously. Venus is 2,500% higher temperature than it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, every planet is heating up. We're heating up. I believe we are being dragged through the ether that's in the solar system by the arm of the Milky Way at a bazillion miles an hour. So we are never in the same space for more than an 18 billionth of a second. We're flowing through space, and who's to say that space is not denser? And I am to say it is denser, because everything that's happening indicates that we are pushing through a denser atmosphere. And then they're starting to talk about it at CERN. I'm taking a course at University of Geneva right now, and I'm working with the instructors there, and I'm telling them what I think is happening, and they are not totally opposed to what I'm saying. We're talking. And I'm showing them my light experiments and stuff, and they're validating this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, they're validating it. Anyway, this we could, and then now they're talking about different things that could be in there, debris and who knows what, because everything in front of us is going to come to us. We don't know what's in front of us. We are coming to that much faster than anybody thinks, and the entire space is filled with this ether, and everything as we spin rubs through it. And that's why the arms of the Milky Way are twisted back and they're broken into bands, because everything in the entire universe is coated with electrons. All right, so everything is negative on its surface. You got to think of it this way. Every single thing there's not a thing that exists that is not negative on its surface. And negatives push against negatives. And ether is negatives. It's electrons that are thrown off of luminous bodies. They're just floating in space. They have nothing to do. They're not. The speed of light is silly. These electrons are, some are going fast, some are going slow, some are spinning fast, some are spinning slow. They're drifting around in space. They're dark and unseen. They're so small you don't see them. But when they get plowed into, negatives plowing into negatives creates a magnetic field. Everybody understands this. That's how electricity is generated. And when it does, it creates a huge magnetic field around tiny little particles. And that's the work that I've been doing with experimental light photography and all that stuff. That's up there too. And I've been hitting ether really, really hard because I'm doing this course, and having somebody that I can yell at.
Okay, so I always tell people that come on my show that my 2 hours goes by. It'll seem like 20 minutes. And here we are again. We're coming, to the last, probably 5 minutes of the show. Is there, number one, I'd like to have you back on in the future if you feel like it.
Sure.
I'm also going to send you by email. A bunch of people Skype messaged me and are pretty amazing hosts of shows themselves and asked me if I could get their information to you and maybe you would consider going on their shows, but I'll send that to you by email so you can, because a lot of us think your work is really, really important and valuable, and we really think you should be out there more discussing it and talking about it so more people can learn. Is there anything that's really, really important? I also kind of have a feeling that, the earth is going to have a big shakeup. It's a lot of the work that I've been doing for, I'd say, the last 15 years of my life on soil restoration and things like that. And
I want to work with you on that. I understand that imminently.
Yeah. So
I'm working on with a guy.
I have a feeling. I just have a feeling I'm probably going to be one of the people that ends up surviving whatever's coming. And so I feel like I should know how to, manage things. But for a lot of people out there, it's really hard for them to deal with the fact that things may come to a destruction mode, that we're already kind of in a destruction mode, and that, we've been completely lied to. There's so many fronts that people have to deal with on so many levels. Do you want to talk to people about, like maybe how you prepare or how you deal with it all, and take it all in and continue on, to continue on doing what you're doing, in the face of lots of different truths?
Well, I was never a religious person. I was never any spiritual person to speak of. I'm a scientific person. I want to see something that shows me that what I'm thinking is right, and I found it. And the more I look, the more I find that what was written. And the more I think that eternity is pretty damn certain going to happen. I know I'm going to take a last breath one of these days. Everybody's gonna. And what are you going to do at that point? That's why I'm doing this. Because at that point, I want to get to where I'm not going to be cooking for the rest of eternity. And I'm telling you, if you read with a very discriminating, look at deeply, don't skim through things, you will find out that if you don't do exactly certain things, you are not going to get where you want to go. I don't care how nice of a person you are. And there's things that God and Jesus expect. And I am going to look for Jesus because he's the only one that I know of that came down and tried to keep people from killing each other. So that's my point of view. Now, I'm just hoping I'm right, because everything I see says that he said what he said. I believe he's exactly as advertised. He said who he said he was, and I believe he said, if you look for me and you stick with me and do the things I'm telling you, don't give in to the temptations that you're going to have all around. Everybody's got them. There's not a single person alive who's, I never get tempted. Bullshit. Everybody does. You just gotta go through this. This is an indoctrination into another life. That's the way I'm taking it. So
I think
that's my
I think truth. I think truth is definitely an indoctrination to another life, for certain. Okay, so we're going to throw out the last bits of information. This is Roger Spurr, and you can find everything that he's talked about, all his evidence. He puts it on his YouTube channel. Mud Fossils University. He also is getting ready to do collaborations and work with other amazing people that are out of the box. And they're going to be doing lectures and things of that nature to educate people if you want to be educated, or at least peek in and maybe change your mind about some things. And so he's saying he's flying by the seat of his pants. So he's saying these lectures could start as early as next week, which would be, I don't know. So this is the 5th, August 5th. So it could be, like the 10th or something like that in there. You can find him. You're going to find these lectures at Mud Fossils University and on YouTube. And let's see. Yeah, so that's it. So you can learn a lot. And even if you just go to his YouTube channel now, he has hundreds of videos.
Oh, many hundreds. I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
It'll get organized, and we are looking for people that have expertise in areas to help, because I can't do this whole thing myself. I have somebody very, very nice up Jody.
Right.
I'll let it go.
All right. Thank you for coming on the show. I'll send you an email. Thank you, Roger. Have a great day.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Everybody. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat asses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution